Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation, and I have got a special guest back to the channel, Alan Niven, author, producer, arguably the sixth member of Great White, manager. Alan, welcome to the show. We are going to have a bit of a chat about Great White, and I think it's a band that's a little bit underappreciated in the 80s and beyond. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Very well, and thank you for the gracious introduction. You missed something out. Flea bitten old dog.
Oh dear. No, great to have you on the show. We're going to talk about two albums, their most popular albums in the 80s. One's Bitten, Twice Shy. And it's kind of, this episode's going to be a little bit like behind the music because, Alan, you were at the epicenter of everything that was Great White for a period of time, a considerable period of time. So just to set up the scene, how did you get to manage Great White? Tell us the story.
I originally wanted to sign them to a label that I just started in conjunction with the four owners of Greenworld. We'd had a moment of pure providence. I love to look back at my life and go, none of this was by design. It all just happened. I think I've mentioned to you before that I think the most powerful word in the English language is yes. So when you apply that word at the right moment, sometimes doors open and things happen. And the yes that I gave to Motley Crue opened doors and made things happen. The manager, the then manager for Motley, had come down to Greenworld to see if he could get Greenworld to distribute their indie record, Too Fast for Love. And why was he at Greenworld? Because he'd been rejected everywhere else. So that's why he drove all the way down to Torrance. And Mark Wesley, who's one of the owners of Greenworld, came into my office because I was trying to get the company in some sort of shape as regards sales and management, because it was very scatty when I started working there. You know, the first day I walked into that building, there were a bunch of kids sitting around smoking dope and listening to records. Good. If you want to do that and find out what these records are, do it on your own time. When you're in the office, we're going to be calling people and telling them about these records. Anyway, Mark Wesley gave me a tape of Motley, and I took it home and played it on my incredible stereo. I had a JVC boombox and a pair of Sennheiser headphones, and that was it. And I was traveling light. I wasn't sure how long I was going to stay in California. So I went into Mark the next day and I said, whatever we have to do, let's get this. And my impulse was, it's a rock and roll record, and we have far too many eclectic and esoteric records on the shelves that are hard to sell. And there's one great track on here, Too Fast for Love. So out of that, Don Dawkin came into my office and asked me to sign him. And it was Don who said, there's this band you should sign to your label called Dante Fox.
Right.
And I went to see him and they sucked. I went to see him again. They were consistent. They sucked again, as far as I was concerned. And I'm driving home all the way from Hollywood, all the way down to Palos Verdes. It's something like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I've got to be in my office at 9. And I'm kind of cursing Don. What? Why? And then I got a moment of clear thinking. how do you evaluate Don's ability as a producer? How do you evaluate Don's ability as a songwriter? What do you think of his standards? And I went, I must be missing something. Because Don says there's something there, there's something there. So I went to see him a third time. And they weren't that much better, but when it came to encore time, they played a version of No Doctor that I swear lifted the roof of the troubadour off the walls by 3 inches, and Kendall totally ripped it up. And I'm starting to get tuned to Jack's voice and its possibilities at that point. So at that point, I gave him a card and said, come and talk to me. I had a disagreement with my 4 partners at Enigma, decided I'd had enough with the Hine brothers and I was going to leave. And we had a band meeting up in my little cottage up on Palos Verdes. And Jack looked at me and he said, well, what are we going to do? You know, they thought they were going to get signed to a little label, big deal for them. And I said, I don't know, Jack, what am I going to do? And Jack looked at me and he said, managers. And it was, he'd brought this up before, he'd brought it up at a lunch once in a place called Café Toulouse in the hinterland of Torrance. And Jack said, we want you to manage us. And I said, I can't do that. It's an entire conflict of interest. I'm your record label. You need a manager to speak for you and to work with me, or against me, or with me. But it's a conflict of interest, Jack. And I thought I was out of it. And he said, no, we want you to manage. Jack, I know nothing, absolutely nothing about management. And he leaned across the table and looked at me and he said, you'll learn. So that's basically how it started with them.
When you said they sucked, was it the songs were awful, their playing was sloppy? What didn't appeal to you those first couple of times?
Presentation and attitude. The songs were, there were 1 or 2 that were okay. In fact, you will not believe what I found last week.
Well, there you go.
It is still in shrink wrap. And that's the very first thing that we put out of the night, the EP. I found that in the box a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't believe it. Some of the songs are promising, but vibe and presentation was definitely not there. I mean, they were half black and half white. Lauren Black was all in black. Kendall was all in white. Jack was wearing half white and half black clothes. And he had a huge fucking knife taped to his arm. And I'm looking at this and going, whatever, you know, that is not appealing to me. So that was the problem. And I mean, you know, basically, and we can roll into an album here if you wish, their desire at that time was to be Judas Van Halen. That's who they admired the most, and that's who they wanted to emulate. So we went down that road with the first EMI record.
Yep.
And we were still going down that road after we got dropped by EMI. And while we were doing demos for, you know, recording new songs, they were okay. It was much of a muchness, same as before. But between takes, I was, wait a minute, what's Kendall doing in there? Because between takes, Kendall would be playing really nifty blues licks. Slowly the light bulb goes on in my head. That's who he is. He's trying to be KK Downing or something, and he's not. But if you want to know who Kendall is, that's him. before he feels he needs to be a rock and roll guitarist. If he's just sitting there playing on his own and thinking nothing's happening, he's playing these really tasty blues licks. And of course, by then I was, well immersed in the qualities of Jack Russell's voice, which was exceptional. So
Yes, absolutely.
you get to a point of going, you know what, let's take a little shift. And the materialization of that shift was on Shot in the Dark, and it was the track called I Don't Want to Face the Day, which was something that came out of Australia. Doc Neeson and the Brewster Brothers.
The Angels, yes.
Yeah. We recorded a better version of that. Anytime we recorded somebody else's song with Grey White, it was always a better version. But that personified or materialized the shift that I saw that we needed to take, and that we would be closer to an early 1970s British blues rock band than Judas Van Halen.
Judas Van Halen, absolutely. One observation with the Once Bitten album, we'll have a bit of a chat about that, is that a lot of the songs take their time to work through and they're kind of allowed to breathe. Was that something as you, as the producer and arranger, were very conscious that let the songs flow? If you've got an idea, let's just let it breathe?
Well, let's go back to I Don't Want to Face the Day. I proved something, mainly to those around me, that I already knew. I knew that you could confound the industry label radio law of no more than 4 minutes for a song. And it came from radio to the labels, and they tried to enforce that. And it all has to do with how many songs they can play in an hour and how much interest they can keep things moving and so on and so forth. And long songs tended to be put after midnight on FM. During the day we're going to pump it up and we're going to pump them out. But I'd proven something with Face the Day, that didn't have to be. And one, as silly as it sounds, all simplistic reasons I knew that we could beat that was that I had had a radio show on WINZ Zeta 4 in Miami for a year. And I knew there were moments when I needed to go to the bathroom. I wanted to go and get a coffee. Some girls at the door of the radio stations, and you got to go and let her in. So you'd want that song that was more than 4 minutes long, because that would allow you to get away from the goddamn desk. So I knew that already. And it appealed to me from a creative point of view, because let me ask you, how many songs exist?
That's a profound question. What a few.
Would you like an accurate answer?
Hit me with it.
6. I operated on that for a long time until my wife rolled her eyes at me and said, "You're so dumb because you write the 7th more often than you write the other 6. And I go, 7th? Oh, right. The question. And of course, a band like Pink Floyd is brilliant at writing the question song. But the other 6 are, I love you, I hate you, I feel good, I feel bad, the world is wonderful, the world is totally fucked up. So if we've only got 6 songs to work with, you've got to be inventive in how you present them. And the reason why people coming back to the same songs again and again is because of the character and peculiarity of the individual artist. That's what they fall in love with. That's why they'll have somebody express the same emotion, but in their way and differently. So one of the things I knew I could do to broaden the landscape, and again, you're conscious of the fact that there have been all these great bands and musicians who have gone before. And what can you do to deserve to actually get people's attention, since it's all been done before in a way? Well, one of the things I knew I could do was make a song longer. And by making a song longer, I could mess with the arrangement, and I could also provide more of a guitar scape for a guitar player who I knew could fill a guitar scape, that he had the feel to be able to play more than 12 bars of a solo. All right. So those are things that I wanted to get to. And of course, the funny thing is how did I get to be in that position to be able to do that? Tom Wally had become the responsible A&R guy at Capitol. He replaced Ray Tuskin, who signed the band. And I sat with Tom and we pulled up a list of, here are the producers we'd love to work with. Here's our A list. Here's our B list. Here's our C list. And now what the fuck, we'll have a D list. And we worked from the top down and we weren't getting any response at all. And one day I'm driving down 190th Street in Torrance. And Tom calls me on the phone. He says, we've got a producer. And I go, oh, really? Who we got? And he said the name and I went, that doesn't thrill me much. And I said, well, what's he asking for? He wants a guarantee of $75,000 up front and he wants 4 points on the record. I was outraged. What the fuck? I can produce this band better than that guy, and I'm not going to cost 75 grand and 4 points. I'm in the house. It just came out of me in a moment of outrage and anger that this D-list producer was making an A-list demand. Well, I should have kept my mouth shut, shouldn't I? Because there's a silence on the other end of the phone. And I think, oh, fuck. Who have I just pissed off? And then Tom finally says, you think you can produce this band better than these guys? And I go, fuck yes, I can. He said, you can record 4 songs. Oh, now things are different. Now the weight of responsibility is different. Now my perception of being involved in the formation of a record or the formation of songs is different. I was like, okay. And the first song we recorded was called Rock Me.
I want to talk about that song.
Where I applied all we talked about. Kendall's Blues Licks.
Yes.
It's almost 8 minutes long. Yep. And the very, very seminal origin of Rock Me was I sat Michael down, Michael Lardy, and I said, Michael, we're going to write a song that's as long as Face the Day, but instead of a repetitive dynamic like we have in Face the Day, I want a continuous dynamic. In other words, I want to start real low and build. And that's,
yep.
And eventually Lauren came up with the bass riff and we were off.
Great song. I think it's the standout track in the whole discography of Grey White. It's one of my personal favourites. It's got a kind of a Southern Gothic feel to it. And Jack Russell's vocals. I'd like to talk about the recording process with Jack Russell's vocals. Was it easy to record him? Because he has so many gears to his voice, but there's
Right.
always this underlying menace.
Let's start with the duality of recording vocals with Jack. On this album, which was the first album that I had primary producer responsibility, and I shared with Michael, and Kendall sat on a stool in the back of the room through the entire record, but wasn't a producer thereafter. When Jack was singing, and it felt constrained to me, and I only ever did it on this record. After this record, I said, we're not doing that anymore. I would send a tech down to the corner shop for a fifth of vodka. He'd bring back the fifth of vodka. It would go on a stool in front of Jack, and I'd look at Michael and I'd go, we've got 45 minutes. Whatever we get in the next 40 to 45 minutes is going to be the best we're going to get. After that, he is going to be his usual, absolutely ridiculous self. He's going to be cracking jokes. He's going to be drunk. He's going to forget lyrics. He's going to forget what he's doing. And then he's going to go, Nib, let's go down to the rain tree and see if we can score some blow. All right. We've got 40 minutes of work here. And there were a few times on Once Bitten that I went to that, but I hated it. I hated the fact that we had to pour vodka down his throat to get him loose. I had to find a better way, and I'd found a better way. When we were doing basic tracks, I would demand that Jack come in and do vocals while we were doing basic tracks. But here's the thing. I used to set up a microphone in the cupboard. I'd stick him in there and shut the door. So now Jack's not the center of attention. I'm not staring at him through the studio glass, evaluating everything. And being the performer that he is, he's cracking his cracks and he's loose. And you're in the cupboard, Jack. It doesn't matter. I just need you to do me a scratch vocal so that these idiots out here know exactly where they are so that they don't get lost. No problem, no problem. So we do a scratch vocal, while maybe a couple, while doing basics. And then, when it became vocal time, we'd come in and I'd have Jack sing it down all the way through, once. Make notes. Have him sing it down all the way through a second time. Maybe a third, maybe a fourth. When I got to the fifth, I'm like, no, we're losing it now. It's not there anymore. Okay. Then I'd say, bye-bye, Jack. Go to the rain tree, go get high. I'll call you when I'm ready. And then we'd comp the best lines out of each performance. How many times do you think the basis of the song was the scratch track that he recorded in the cupboard? Time and again, that was the backbone of the entire performance.
Wow.
And then the trick was he'd come back and I'd sit him down at the desk and I'd go, okay, your turn, listen carefully. And what I'm waiting for is for him to turn around and go, wait a minute, I can hear a punch there. I can hear a cup there. That's not me there. And every time you turn around and go, that's me, that's it. But we'd comp. And time and again, the backbone was the scratch track, where he was back and loose and looking for attention because somebody had shut him in the cupboard.
That's an amazing story. Unbelievable to get the best out of Jack. I noticed with a lot of his vocals that he has this sort of restraint, and then when it comes just before the chorus, he ramps it up a gear, and then it'll come back, and then it'll go. It's sort of like he's shifting gears within a song. Did you ever give him direction, Jack, I would like you to sing this song in this manner, or it was just completely him, how he interpreted it?
Jack made me laugh one day. I sent him a song that I'd written, and this is, a year or two ago. And he was talking to me about it, and he's going, "You sound good on this, Nib." And I go, "That's not me singing, Jack." And he goes, "Oh, well, it sounds like you when you used to sing songs to me." Because forming the lyric content and the melody, there would be the moment when we sat and I'd sing him what I was thinking, and he'd take it on board, and then he'd Russellize it. Try and get me to sing in public. It won't happen. All right. I have no confidence in that at all. I don't have the voice that I wish I did have. You talk about Southern rock and roll bands, the Molly Hatchets and so on and so forth. I wish I had a gritty Southern voice. I had to make do with marrying a Southern woman who can sound really gritty. But we would go over the songs together. The thing was with Jack, I was well aware of his capabilities. So it was a case of when he needs to step on the gas, I know the gas is going to be there, and I know it's going to be easy to get him to do it. And when we were going over the form of the song and the lyric of the song and the melody of the song, he would already be picking up on moments where he'd go, "I'm going to do this here and I'm going to do that there."
Right. So he was kind of in lockstep with you because tell the folks, you're the songwriter. You, as you said in our last interview, 90% of the songs. What did you actually contribute in respect to the songs? The lyrics? The arrangement? Lyric and melody.
Yeah, and arrangement. And the starting point would either be a riff or a figure that came off the piano with Michael. But if you read the credits, you can figure it out.
Yeah.
Whether with a Kendall riff or a Lottie phrase, because that's clear in the credits. But Jack and I we worked really well together. I knew him, he knew me.
Yep. So with the album, was there any interference from the record company that they wanted a particular sound?
Fuck no.
No, you were left to your own devices.
Totally.
Completely. Good.
Yeah. And there were a number of aspects to that. First of all, Tom Wally did not sign the band. All right. His predecessor did. So he didn't care that much. All right. It was just some housework he had to do because we had to make our first record for the company. It became his responsibility. So after we'd recorded Rock Me and I can't remember, a couple of other songs, I called him down to the studio and he heard Rock Me and he just turned around to me and he said, "Finish the record. Just go." And that was the last time he came to the studio. And part
Mm.
of the was that we were located in the South Bay, in the back of Redondo Beach, and I figured that it was easier for a capital executive to get into a hire car, be taken to LAX, and fly to a studio in Cleveland than it was for them to get in their own car and drive all the way across the South Bay, deal with the traffic on the 405, and then find our little studio. That was too much like an effort. So we never saw anybody until we were done. And that was pretty much the way it was until Hooked. And when we were doing Hooked, I made a point of requesting certain people to come down, marketing people, PR people. I wanted them to hear something in advance and start the word of mouth on the record.
Yeah.
Because I was very concerned about being able to follow up an album that basically went triple platinum. It was
Yep.
just shy of triple platinum.
Yeah. Um, Lady Red Light is the first song on the album, and it's a fast paced rocker. Did you always have it in your mind once it was recorded, this was going to be the song list, the selection, and you were going to start off the album with a bit of a bang, so to speak?
I used to know the tracking order of the album before we recorded Note One. Right.
Yep.
My rule for recording is pre-production, 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 and pre-production. Okay. So we would know these songs backwards before we started recording, because what I wanted to do in the studio was catch the best energy of the best performance. I cannot figure out how people can go into a studio without their material already being formed and standing around and going, well, what about this riff? What about that riff? That is a total waste of time and money. Get into the rehearsal studio and make that record. Then, when you go into the studio, you're looking for performance. And that's all you're looking for. You're not looking for creativity. We've already done that. The other thing you're looking for, the happy accident. The thing that happens that you didn't think of or weren't expecting. And the minute it happens, you go, oh my God, what did you do there? And one of the things I used to do was I would have a 1/2-inch reel running all the time through every recording session. So if there was ever a moment that something happened and he went, look at the goosebumps on me. What did you do there? That's awesome. I don't know, Niv, I've forgotten already. Play it back, Michael. We'd have it on tape. So those are the two things that you really, really wanted to find. And we would have a dry marker board up on the wall, and it would have the track listing, and there would be, columns, basic tracks, guitar overdubs, bass, solo, vocals, percussion, and you just go and tick them and work through it. I used to deliver Great White Records to Capitol for, on the average, $115,000 a record. And they thought that was amazing because, for example, Heart was costing $450,000 for a record. And when we were on the label, one day, one of the executives pulled me aside and he said, I'm going to tell you something. You are the most profitable band per unit sold on this label. Part of that was being prepared, doing your job, keeping it moving. The other thing about recording is the tape in there can be the fucking devil, because that tape absorbs more than sound. It absorbs vibe, attitude, state of mind, collective group state of mind. It all gets onto that tape. So the other thing that I like to do when I'm recording is momentum. If somebody comes in and they're not feeling it, and you can tell straight away if somebody's not there and not feeling it, go home. And you bring somebody else in and you do something else. So that every single day there's progression, and there's a sense of, oh, we've gone from here to here. And there's no sense of, oh, God, he beat me up and I almost got it, and now I've got to try and do it again tomorrow. If somebody didn't have it that day, they were home in an instant. Go do something else. Go to the beach, go to the bar, whatever you got to do. We'll do this another day, no worries. Because that momentum informs the tape. And I like to think that, in the album what we're talking about right now, there's a sense of momentum through it. There's a sense of energy through it. And that's how you catch that feel, is by keeping things moving.
Mm-hmm. Alan, you wrote the lyrics, and there's some great lyrics on this album. All Over Now. I love the lyric, woke up a little too rough, looking like a quarter when a dollar ain't enough. Do lyrics like that just pop out like a light bulb in the middle of the night? I mean, how did a lyric like that come into your head?
That particular lyric comes from me looking at Jack walking into the studio, and I'm going, oh, what were you fucking doing last night and this morning? Look at the state of you. Boom, there's your lyric. Because part of what I was doing very consciously was I was putting words in Jack's mouth, and Jack was going to go out on a stage and have to be credible and believable in it. So I was observing Jack all the time.
Mm.
So when I say woke up this morning, I don't mean me. Him. Look at him. Look how fucked up he is. Good God, man.
How important in these songs is the chorus and making it watertight, hooky?
I think Tom Petty overstated it, but I'm very amenable to his thinking. Don't bore us, get to the chorus. All right. And in terms of a chorus, I'll tell you a thing that I used to do on every mix. Is we'd set the master fader at a certain point. And then every time we got to a chorus, we'd move that master fader up. And we figured, it's maybe 2 dB. And the idea was that master fader move was something that you would feel rather than hear. But we used to do that on every fucking chorus and almost every fucking song. Just to get that little bit of more out of the chorus. And in the arrangements, it's bring everything down out of a chorus because you've got to build back to another one. That was a neat little trick. It seems to work. Nobody has ever said, oh, your choruses get loud, but I think they feel them.
Absolutely. But as I said, a lot of these songs are allowed to breathe. And I find that approach quite different with a lot of the genre bands in the 80s, which kind of went down that cookie cutter 3-minute to 4-minute path.
What of equal importance to what you play or sing? What's of equal importance? Silence. air. If you
Yes.
if you don't have silence and air, you have no ability to employ dynamic. And that's emotional dynamic or volume dynamic or tone dynamic. Um, Air is really, really important. I'd love the way Izzy played because Izzy would know when not to play as much as he knew when to play. He had an incredible sense of leaving air, leaving space.
Lardy's rhythm in this
Yep,
album. That's
yep.
one thing I was just tuning, lockstepping in when I was listening to this album over the last couple of weeks. Is his rhythm playing is very tasty, but there's space.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not flashy either. It's supportive of the song
Yes,
because at the end of the day, and of course we can come up with all kinds of situations that contravene this point of view. But in general, with the big broad brush, at the end of the day, it's all about the statement. What are you saying and why? What is the lyric? What is this about? Because for me, for something to really stay with me, it's got to be a statement that is comprehensible and worth making. As a general rule of thumb, and I got better at this years later, but as a general rule of thumb, I would always have the rule that in the middle eight, you have to apply gravity and you have to explain in the middle eight what you're saying and why you're saying it. You can be poetic in the verses. You can just teasingly be hooky in the choruses. But when you get to the middle eight, make sure people understand what you're saying and why you're bothering to say it. Because, you know, if you don't do that, then you're just an entertainer making noise. If you don't have a great lyric or a great vocal, then you've just got sonic wallpaper. Um, and I mean, you know, that's obviously a hangover from when I grew up. You know, when John Lennon singing "Give Me Some Truth" or "Imagine," pow, impact, huge. It took me a while to get into Live at the Fillmore East. I had a friend who said, "I don't get this record, it's just guitar." Well, after a while, you went, "Yeah, just guitar. Let's listen to that, listen to it." But the initial thing was, wow, there's an awful lot of guitar here and not much in the way of songs, you know, and that was my first blush with Live at the Fillmore East, the Allman Brothers. Um, Very much of the school that, you know, if you've got Ray Davies in your band, you've got something exceptional because he always had something to say or something to have a joke about. I mean, Waterloo Sunset, what a song.
it's almost it's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perfect song.
Along with God Only Knows.
Whiter
I mean,
shade of pale. Perfect song.
yeah, a little bit different. Still not exactly sure what they're saying in that song, but I know it's said. I know every word of it, but I'm still not exactly sure what the story is there in Whiter Shade of Pale. It's it's a bit of an enigma, that song to me. Um, you know, but for example, that we were mentioning Waterloo Sunset, no mistaking that. I want to be with a working class girl down by the muddy old Thames with her arm around my shoulder, at peace and in love, and we're happy we're living in London. Boom.
Mm.
There's the story, there's the image, there's the desire, there's the dream.
Yep. I want to talk about Never Change Heart. So in the 80s, power ballad was a bit of currency in commercial
All right, let
radio
me ask you a
hits.
question. You know this better than I do, and I'll confess something. I almost went to my box and pulled out the records because I'm going, I need to remember what's on which record because we're going to have this conversation. And I went, fuck it, no, I'm going to go make a sandwich instead, and didn't do it. Never Change Heart. Was that on the original of Once Bitten, or was that originally released on Shot in the Dark?
Well, it's there. That's on the original, one of the early
Okay,
CDs.
cool.
Yep, yep.
You're right. It was a long time ago, Peter.
I know. I'm picking your brains to remember that. But was that sort of everyone was doing power ballads? Did you feel that Great White had to just throw in a power ballad on the album to keep up with the Joneses, or
Peter, I don't think it's a power ballad. I really don't. Um, I mean, David Coverdale could do a power ballad. I thought it was just a song of a certain tempo and a certain feel. Um, Save Your Love was definitely a ballad, but I never thought of it as powerful. I mean, in
yeah,
certain respects, I might have overproduced that track. It might have been better with just a couple of acoustic guitars. That might have been a more honest way for that track, for that song to come to life and come to form. In fact,
mm,
now you mention it and now I think about it, I'm going to say, yeah, I did fuck that up. I overproduced it. It should have been something else. Um,
yeah.
in terms of a power ballad, Love is a Lie is definitely a ballad, and it's definitely a very powerful sentiment, and it has a dynamic in it. So if we're talking about power ballads, I'd go, yeah, we could call Love is a Lie a power ballad.
Mm.
But, I want you to remember something. This is my first record as a producer, okay? I had my self-confidence. I had to be decisive, but that's not to say there wasn't a little voice in my head going, oh, fuck. Should have kept your fucking mouth shut. Now you're responsible. If this fucks up, it's down on you. You'd better get this right. So I didn't have 2, 3, 4 years of producing invisible records by bands nobody had ever heard of to get my chops up. It was, you're on deck. We're 2 runs down, and there are 2 men on base, and you're last at bat. You'd better fucking hit it out of the park. And that was the kind of pressure I was under, to use the baseball analogy.
Well, it went to number 23, sold platinum. I think everyone was happy, that you're talking about progression with the band.
It,
It's
it actually,
definitely progression.
in its album cycle, it did 1.75 million. On if it had been on Geffen, it would have done 2.5.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't forget, I was working with Capital and Geffen, so I could see both engines really well. The hood was up on both engines, and believe you me, when Geffen decided they were going to go after something, they went and fucking got it.
Well, lucky it wasn't on MCA. That's all I'll say.
Oh, Musicians Cemetery of America.
Twice Shy. Talk about that. There you go.
All right, what's the first question you're going to ask me?
I'm not going to go for the cliche about once bitten, twice shy.
Oh, well, no, we have to talk about that. But
We will.
The first thing you should ask me is, what do the covers mean, Niv?
What do they mean?
All right. There's a lot of interpersonal relationship stuff going on Once Bitten. And the necklace is primal. And if you look at the girls on the back, Tracy is wearing sophisticated, expensive jewelry. Do you know what the true definition of the word sophisticate is?
No, tell me.
It implies that it is something that is overly considered and not pure. To be sophisticated implies there's a lack of purity to the thought. So my little joke was, here's the girls. Tracy is now sophisticated. She knows how to manipulate and get what she wants. Look at her jewels. And she's got an ingenue with her who's wearing what she used to wear. Primal old teeth. Well, he's going to teach her otherwise. And of course, Once Bitten, Twice Shy. Believe you me, once we decided to call the first record Once Bitten, it was already in that very moment decided the next was going to be called Twice Shy.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were touring with Judas Priest in '84, our sound man had worked with Ian Hunter. And one day on the bus he said, have you ever heard this song by Ian Hunter? And I go, no, I don't know much of Ian Hunter's stuff. I knew one of his records back in the late 70s, but that was about it. And he played me Once Bitten, Twice Shy. Into the Rolodex it goes. So, and look at where Once Bitten, Twice Shy is on the record. It's the last track. It was done as a marketing ploy so as that people who recognized Once Bitten or knew of Once Bitten might possibly recognize Twice Shy. We're not dealing with Einsteins all the time. You're looking for those little ways to tie things together so people go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
It's the same band. Oh, cool. So we recorded Once Bitten, Twice Shy and stuck it on the end of the album to have an excuse to call the album Twice Shy. And of course, it's a good song. All right?
It is.
The whole thing about doing a cover is pick a good song that perhaps was not recorded well by the original composer, or that nobody knows. Face the Day. Nobody knew Face the Day. Or the shame of the American marketplace and MCA. People didn't know that song. How the fuck did they not know that song? It was fucking brilliant. So I'm sitting there going, oh, serendipitous again. Thank you, universe. You just gave me exactly what I needed. All right? Same with Twice Shy. Once Bitten, Twice Shy. We had no idea it was going to be a hit. When John Faggot from Capitol called me and he said, we want to start radio promotion for Once Bitten, Twice Shy. What do you think of that? I went, yeah, sure. You know, because in my mind, it's we put out a track, we put out another track, and then maybe we put out a ballad, and hopefully we break through by then. All right. So first track is not do or die. And I'm not going to turn around to a guy who's running the department and piss all over his idea and maybe queer how he feels about the whole record and oops. John, that's a brilliant idea. Put it out there. So then he calls me up and he goes, do you mind if I take this top 40? Now, bear in mind, there were some bands who never wanted to be top 40. Led Zeppelin is the prime example. And of course, the way I thought about it was, good fucking luck, John. You think you're going to get this on top 40? Well, go break a leg. And then I can come in and say, well, it's a shame it didn't happen, but here's the track we will work, and you will owe me. Right, so you go ahead. First week at Top 40, he got how many ads? 0. Nobody. He got a handful the next week, and a handful more the week after that. And by the time this thing was nationwide and everywhere, the original stations who added it were dropping off because they'd gone through 6 weeks of playing it, 8 weeks of playing it. If we calculated it, if he'd got, say, 5 or 6 ads in that very first week, it would have been a number 1. But because the first ones were dropping off, while it was still growing on the latecomers, we never quite had the numbers to make it to number 1. It would have been a number 1. Who the fuck saw that coming? On my little touring band, where our whole philosophy was, we've got to be on the road, we've got to be playing, we've got to be on the road, we've got to be playing, we've got to be reaching an audience. Nobody saw that coming. It became a monster. And like all monsters, they make mess and they're not always good. But they're entertaining monsters. I mean, how many times can you play that damn song? They're still playing it. Oh my God. It must drive them mad.
Well, it's a perfect cover, and a lot of folks think it's a better version than the original. And it goes to that theory of yours. If you're going to do a cover song, you've got to...
Have you heard the original? It's also, what's your instrumentation on this, Ian? Oh my God, what were you thinking? I think he was thinking that he thought the song was a joke and he was going to make a joke out of how it sounded. So somebody comes along and goes, no, actually, it's a really good song, and we're not going to treat it as a joke. We're going to treat it up good. And do you know what he didn't return? I mean, the single, again, was just shy of 1 million. It was 970,000 or something. Then it's on the album. Can you imagine what he got in royalties, composer royalties for that? And all he could do was go into a British music newspaper and say that he didn't like it and he thought it wasn't very good. Well, fuck you, Ian. Hope you like your new car. Was it a down payment on the house? You can send me a fucking Christmas card. But I had to sit back and go, Ian never had his career. He never connected. David Bowie came and saved his ass with one song and kept him relevant. So he's a bitter man. He's looked at all those people who did get acknowledged and go forward, and he didn't, and he thought he should. So of course he's going to be a bitter person when somebody comes along and goes, you know what, Ian, that little ditty of yours, this is how it should be done. Of course he's going to be bitter.
Alan, so this is a hit for the band. How do you follow it up with another single? Was that a bit of a conundrum? You're looking through the songs. How do we follow this up? Back and forth conversation within the band or the powers that be?
We were going to... The next track was going to be Mr. Bone. Okay. Now, the main rock and roll station in Detroit started playing it on their own, and it went to number 1 on their playlist. But we're still working through Once Bitten, Fucking Twice Shy. It's still going. So Capitol cannot get after Mr. Bone at that point. So but when I say this thing was a monster, it was a monster for a summer. My nice strategic progression of, well, we'll go to Mr. Bone next, and then we'll go to one of the ballads. Never happened. We had to deal with that song all summer because all the top 40 were playing it, all the AOR were playing it. It was monstrous. So it completely screwed up our strategy of what are we going to take to radio and why and when. I mean, it was getting to a point where my thoughts were along the lines of, do we come with another track? We have been so overexposed on this one song. This is going to be a problem.
With the recording of Twice Shy, how was this different for the band and you? I mean, comparative to the previous one, was this a long recording process, Alan?
It was almost exactly the same number of days as the previous.
Right.
And it was the same sort of structure. The difference was, Once Bitten we had nothing to live up to. We also had a sense of excitement, a sense of relief that we were back in the saddle, that we had a label again, and we had fought really hard to get a second chance, and we felt really good about it.
Yep.
Oh, fuck, it sold almost 2 million. Oh, now we've got to follow that. And we can't write the same record. Whereas if Once Bitten had gone gold, Twice Shy might have been a slightly similar record in a development. But because Once Bitten had had that exposure, now you're looking at it and going, fuck me, now we've got to turn a new page and start over. For the longest time, I think Twice Shy was my least favorite Great White record. And then one night, my eldest son actually sat me down and made me listen to the whole thing. And he goes, Dad, it's good. What's up? But it didn't have the feel of Once Bitten in terms of personal states of mind. I go back now and I listen and I go, oh. You always used to complain about bands who had come off the road and all they could write about was being on the road. And here you are designing this whole record around being on the road. And the original idea was that we would do the video for Twice Shy in LA. The next video, Mr. Bone, would be in Louisiana. Hence, when you see that video, you see where we've tried to cockamamie up some Spanish moss in a tree, because we were back in LA doing something then and weren't on the road in Louisiana. And then I wanted to be in New York for, was it the Angel song? You know, I wanted to make it a travelogue, video-wise and in theme, and because that's basically where we got to on the record. But I can go back now and I can listen to Highway Nights and I can go, yeah, that stands up. That's a good little track. And it's, what's the terminology? It's a statement of intent. This is who we are. This is why we're doing it. This is what we do.
Well, I think Tony Montana's driving bass line on that song gives it a real sense of urgency. And I think Kendall's playing on this album, especially that song, the bluesy licks, with the chords of Lardy, it's just a great little mix on this song. That's an outstanding song.
I don't think there's a Great White song where you can sit back and go, oh, Ken fluffed that one. You know, pretty much he got to deliver on all of them.
So when he was in the recording studio, Alan, every time, as soon as the red light went on, he delivered every time?
No, we'd spend all day constructing the solo. We'd spend all day at it.
Mm.
And then once it was, because it had to converse with the song. It
Yeah.
couldn't be a Lynch solo, for example. It had to sit in the song and have an eloquence that was in conversation with Jack's vocal.
Right.
So we spent hours on his solo. I once had a VHS on a tripod in the studio. And one day my eldest son comes and he's found these little cassettes. Hey Dad, can I check this out? I go, yeah, sure, whatever. And he takes it off and he gets a player and puts it in. He comes back at the end and he goes, and I had this thing set where it would film for 30 seconds, then close off for a minute or two, then film for 30 seconds and then close off. I can't remember the exact timing, but you had this thing on this camera where you could put it on a tripod and walk away and forget about it, and it would just film automatically a certain amount of time while it was plugged in. So he comes back having watched this and he goes, Dad, how long did that solo construction take? And I turned around to him and I said, all day. But he had sat there and watched it. Oh,
Mm.
it blew his mind.
So, it taking all day, would you just say, Kendall, do it again? This is not right. Was it that sort of thing? He'd do it, he'd lay down the track and you go, nah, got to do it again, do it again. Was it sort of like that?
No, we'd build it. We'd get a start, we'd get an into the solo, and then we'd try various things along the way
Mm.
until it really worked and it really sounded good and it felt good. It was constructive. And, yeah, it took all day. Guess what? What you recorded in that day is still around today. Maybe we should have taken 2 days. No, we didn't need to take 2 days. A day was enough. But it was constructed. It wasn't winged. It wasn't, oh, there's going to be a magic bolt of lightning coming down the chimney that's going to strike me and I'm going to play something brilliant. It's with solos, it's in the moment pre-production. And you have to do it then because then you've got your scratch vocal, you've got the feel of the basics, you've got the good feeling drum track. So that is the moment to actually construct the solo.
Yep. On this album, there's still the same template that the songs are allowed to breathe. So even a song like Baby's on Fire, clocks in at 6 minutes 11. There's still, it's telling a story. The songs are breathing. There's space between the notes. That's something you were very conscious of when you were arranging and producing.
Well, that's why it's there. That's why it's where it is. More conscious of it in pre-production than I am in the studio.
Mm.
Because that's when the song is put together and that's when you're looking for, okay, where's the dynamic in this? How can we, how many songs exist again? Fucking millions. And how many have the intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus,
Yep.
verse, pre-chorus, chorus, middle eight, fade out. I mean, so many of them. You're always looking for something to challenge the predictability of the listener.
Yep.
They're not going to sit there and go, oh, I know what's coming next.
Yep.
And whether they actually think it or just their body feels it, they're expecting it because they're so conditioned to that form all the time. So wherever you can fuck with the form, fuck with the form.
Mm. What were the band dynamics like around the time of this album?
Complex. To begin with, this relief that we got a second album away, because once we got a second album away, we were starting to look at each other and go, fuck me, maybe we really do have a career here. Maybe we've got something that's going to last a little bit. Oh my God, all those dreams, all that big talk, we're going to do this. Fuck me, it looks like we might be able to do it. So there was relief. For me and Michael, it was also a wake-up call, because I didn't think Twice Shy was that great of a record. And for it to sell almost 3 million copies blew my mind. And for me personally, I was looking at the next album and going, this one had better be good. Third album along, it's got to be better than Twice Shy. And much to my surprise, because Hooked ended up being a disappointment because it was not handled well at Capitol and it only sold about 1 million copies. Yep. For a long time, my emotional connection to that record was great. It was like the beginning of hard times for the band. This record that I thought was better than the previous two, not getting to what it should do. But after 3 decades of Great White fans telling me that it's their favourite record, and probably best recorded version of the band, I can sit back and go, well, I wasn't necessarily wrong. I should feel better about it. Jack's vocal performances on that record are stunning. They really are. There's better use of space and air on that record.
Yes.
It starts and it goes all the way to the end. And it was also when a lot of the songs reflected personal relationships. But on this one, if you don't get it from the cover, you actually get the girl in the end. You take her out into the desert, under the desert moon, and then you're left with a wonderful afterglow. You actually have a relationship that you don't have to bitch about, because an awful lot of rock and roll songs about interpersonal relationships are bitching and moaning. And I'm guilty too, and I have a right to be guilty considering who I was married to at the time. But on Hooked, the idea was, you know what? There is somebody there. You're going to get the girl. Where I fucked up on the cover, because I thought it was funny enough, what I should have done was taken, what's her name? The girl on the cover, I'm forgetting her name. I'm sorry. I should have taken her down to the beach, to where a fishing boat might come in, and I should have hung Jack up by his ankles as if he was a court shark and put her in waders and given her a fishing line and taken that picture for the back. And I should have done that, and I was too stupid to think of it at the time. But I thought
hindsight's always hindsight's always a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah. Alan, in the band, was it a democracy or was there a natural band leader?
If I'm honest, there was a form of Chinese democracy. It's called Niv's democracy.
I suspected that, so I wanted to flush it out.
Yeah. it's a very delicate tightrope to walk. First and foremost, someone has to be decisive to make up their mind and to keep momentum in the process, and to also carry a little bit of a vision of what you're doing and always be in touch with that vision. On the other hand, they should also have no problem turning around and saying, what do you think? You got a better idea? What you got? You got something here? You got something in mind? Give me an idea. So you have to be decisive, and on the other hand, you have to be in a situation where people can express their point of view or what they're thinking. That's why it would take a day to get a guitar solo done. Because you're not telling him what to play. By a process of elimination, you're kind of leading to somewhere. And part of the magic of that is you may not be absolutely certain where you're going to lead him to. But as we build this thing, it's going to become self-evident, and we're going to go, okay, that's it. Got it now. It's good. Well done.
With Twice Shy, how is Jack handling fame?
As well as he handled infamy. I'm reminded of a story of the Rolling Stones coming to Australia for the first time. And back in the day, it seemed like when they landed, they would be beset upon by a horde of journalists with microphones asking rude and invasive questions the minute they step off the plane, half jet lagged out of their minds. And there's a fabulous piece of film of this journalist going up to Keith Richards and going, Mr. Richards, we hear you've got a drug problem. Keith leans back and he says, nah, mate, I don't have a drug problem. I can afford them now. Actual piece of footage. Asking me about Jack, for some reason, that comes to mind.
He was a bit hard to manage as around this period.
Well, there was the disaster of when we finally got the band into position to be a headliner of them on their own merit. And we had MSG and Havana Black supporting. And Jack goes clean off the rails and over the cliff wall in Midland, Texas, which was an incredible disaster and had a wretched impact on the band. There's that. And that was surprising to me, and it caught me out, because as far as I was concerned with Jack, I thought he was in his strongest element and most self-assured. And who's the captain of the ship? Put him on a stage. If he's on a stage and he's got songs to sing, it's Captain Jack. He's the fearless leader at that moment. So for him to go off the rails like that, after, I don't know, 3-4 weeks of a tour, caught me out. You know, because that's his element.
Mm.
All right. I'll deal with the record. I'll deal with the videos. You deal with the crowd. You deal with the performance. That's where your truly excellent. Excellent performer.
Mm.
But, he was a bit of a lad, He went to jail for shooting somebody in a fucked up drug heist. And of course, it would only be like, it could, Jack could burst into somebody's house with a gun and say, "Where's the coke?" and have the maid turn around and say, "It's in the fridge," thinking he wanted a soda. That actually happened. Soda's in the fridge, soda's in the fridge. I mean, that tells you something about Jack and Jack's life too. I mean, a sense of absurd comedy. There was a vein of that all the way through his existence.
Well, one thing that does live on with Jack is the music and that voice. And, in talking about Twice Shy, Once Bitten, and I appreciate all the background information, it's his voice that lives on. That's the centerpiece,
Yes.
the core of this band.
Yes.
And what a voice.
Yes. Yes, 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 and yes. And I don't think he ever got his due. But his peer group definitely knew who he was and how good he was. There was no doubt there.
Absolutely. Well, Alan, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'd love to get you on this show again and talk more Grey White, because the story doesn't, start and finish with these two albums. There's more, but there's only so much time we've got to talk about Grey White. But I'd love to talk to you again about it.
Very kind and very generous of you to extend such an invitation. But what I will say is those two records, as far as I'm concerned, are the intro. The best is Hooked and Psycho City and Sail Away. And just to be a contrarian, if somebody's going to start out, if they're interested enough to go, maybe I'll check this band out, I'm not even going to start them on any of those albums. I'm going to say start with the live stage. That's where you should start. That is pure band, and it's a good collection of songs from across the catalogue. And I mean, there are days when you can't avoid people asking about the comparatives between them and GNR. And my simplistic statement is that while Guns N' Roses had the attitude, Great White had the sensibility. And where Great White has a very broad catalogue of self-expression and statements, Guns N' Roses doesn't.
Okay. Well, Alan, wonderful. We will get you back because we want to talk some more Great White and get into, this has been fascinating because there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know, and it's behind the music. And I'll say it again, you're like the sixth member of the band. You are the sixth member of the band, Alan.
Well, I never looked at myself that way. I just had a job to do and I got it done.
Indeed.
That's it. Always a pleasure, Peter.
Absolutely. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. Tell us your thoughts about Great White. We'll get Alan back on the show. Alan, all the best, and thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Peter. A bientôt.